Hi everyone! In today's video, I will be talking to you about one of the main classification of ethical theories, which is the normative theories. So, let's get started. Before we go deeper into this topic, let me introduce myself first. I'm Shahani Claire J. Ramo, second year taking a Bachelor of Physical Education at Jose Rizal Memorial State University in Dipolog City. I'm from Sindangan and currently live in Ulingan as a working student. So these are the things that we need to consider on this topic. We will be tackling the definition of normative ethics, theories of normative ethics, and the definition of each of the three kinds of theories in normative ethics. Let us begin with the definition of a normative theories, and I will give some examples in order to understand well what normative ethics is all about. So, normative ethics is the branch of ethics that studies how man ought to act morally speaking. It examines ethical norms, that is, those guidelines about what is right, worthwhile, virtuous, or just. This branch evaluates standards for the rightness and wrongness of action and determines a moral course of action. Prescriptive in nature, it addresses specific moral questions about what we should do or believe. We do normative ethics if we justify norms like discrimination is wrong or we must always act in accordance with our duty. Just for easy distinction, whereas meta-ethics tackles questions such as what is goodness, normative ethics deals with issues like what ought one to do. To sum it up, normative ethics intends to find out which actions are right and wrong, or which character traits are good and bad. Unlike meta-ethics, this study would be concerned, amongst other things, with determining the meaning and objectivity of moral concepts of right and wrong, or good and bad. So, for example, everyone has a right to a good education. It is wrong to kill people just because they angry. Do to others what we would want others to do to us. So, those examples is called normative ethics because it deals with norms or moral systems, not in the sense of what is average, but in the sense of authoritative standards of what it ought to be. So next, we will be talking about theories of normative ethics, which are generally categorized into three kinds: deontological, teleological, and virtue ethics. The first theory is deontology. It is an ethical system that bases morality on independent moral rules or duties. The term came from the Greek words deon, which means duty, implying that foundational nature of man's duties or obligations. This system equates behaving morally with adherence to duties or moral rules and acting immorally with failure to obey them. Also called non-consequentialism, the system's principles are submitted as obligatory regardless of the consequences that actions might produce. In simple words, deontology is an ethical theory that uses rules to distinguish right from wrong. For example, a father steals food in order to feed his starving family. If I tell the truth because I know I must respect the other person, then I act of duty and my action is right. In that example, deontology determines the rightness and wrongness of actions by examining actions themselves without focusing on their consequences. The second one is teleology. It refers to a moral system that determines the moral values of actions by their outcomes or result. From the Greek word telos, which means end, teleology takes into account the end result of the action as the exclusive consideration of its morality. It deems an actions as morally right if its favorable consequences are greater than its adverse outcomes. Its most famous form is consequentialism, which proposes that morality is determined solely by a cost-benefit evaluation of the action's consequences. So, teleology are concerned with the consequences of actions, which means the basic standards for our actions. Being morally right or wrong depends on the good or evil generated. So, for examples, giving money to a poor person might not be moral if they use it for drugs. A neighbor put the heating on for a family who were away as a surprise and it's burned down the house. So in that case, teleological theories focus on the possible outcomes of an actions. It emphasizes the importance of doing what will maximize benefits and minimize harm to individuals and to society as a whole. Lastly, the virtue ethics, which means a system that places emphasis on developing good habits of characters like kindness and generosity and avoiding bad character traits or vices such as greed or hatred. These theories give importance to moral education, which molds individuals to habitually act in a virtuous manner. Focusing on the character of the agent, virtue ethics describe right actions as those chosen and performed by a suitable virtuous person. In other words, virtue ethics is person-based rather than action-based. It looks at the virtue or moral character of the person carrying out an action rather than at ethical duties and rules or the consequences of particular actions. For example, being honest and having courage, compassion, generosity, fidelity, integrity, fairness, self-control, and prudence. So, virtue ethics helps us understand what it means to be a virtuous human being. Furthermore, it gives us a guide for living life without giving us specific rules for resolving ethical dilemmas. That's all for this video. Thank you and God bless.